Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles tells us about his latest executive action called Deferred Enforced Departure, which would allow the Biden administration to keep any individual or group of individuals inside the United States, regardless of immigration status, criminal history, or potential national security threat. Last month, Joe Biden ordered an 18-month stay of deportation for Palestinians in the U.S. who are already here illegally or who would run out of legal status during that window. Biden said the protection wouldn't apply to terrorists, but conservatives, like Ogles, are dubious of that claim.
And so what you have here is a situation where Biden was talking about creating a status for illegals. Now, here's the problem. Now, I think their argument was, well, by having a status, you'd have this expedited process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would be limited in scope. Well, immigration at the southern border is to be limited if we're having 400,000 people cross our border every month. So we know this administration isn't going to do anything on a limited scale when it comes to illegals. And they are here illegally. You can cite code. They're in violation of the law.
The term is illegal.
That's right. And so with that is, so now here's the problem. Joe Biden runs in 24. He loses. You now have a new administration, the Trump administration, that is determined to begin to deport people, to reverse the flow of individuals invading this country, coming to this country illegally. This new status could get into the way of that. And if nothing else, what it would do is by granting someone a status, then there would be all of these court cases of, well, you can't deport my client because he's been authorized a status. And so this is a literal intentional act by this president to tie the hands of the next president in the ability to deport people that should be deported because they're here illegally. And that's why I have the Send Them Back Act, which would require the deportation of everyone who came into this country illegally under Joe Biden.
So is there any limit to his ability to do that? Any numbers?
I mean, again, that's the question, is because it's by way of rule, could he then apply it retroactively? So we flagged it, we sent a letter, we asked for legal opinion, et cetera, because we wanted to bring this to everyone's attention, and it just doesn't slip through in the dark of the night, and suddenly the next president of the United States, which I believe will be Donald Trump, finds himself unable to deport anyone.
Mm-hmm. So, what's it called? Is there a name for it? Is it the Deferred Enhancement Departure?
Well, right,
Deferred Enforcement Departure.
Deferred Enforcement, right. So basically, rather than deporting you right now, we're going to give you a provisional status. There would be some expedited process by which your case would be reviewed. But again, it gets into, you create choke points. You start granting more people deferred status than they can process. So then you start building a backlog. So you have millions of people now that have a deferred status that'll never, quite frankly, ever be processed. I mean, again, you see how this suddenly the economies of scale don't work, but it's literally, this is the Joe Biden trying to do the job of Congress by way of executive order and or rule.
It's intentional.
It's intentional. So why? I think there's a short term and a long term. On the short term, you're flooding Arizona and New Mexico, other battleground states. You're creating a constituency that's dependent on welfare, food stamps, cell phones, etc. It's a built-in voter block. So this is so that Joe Biden can presumably, or the next person that runs as a Democrat, can get those individuals to vote Democrat in elections. But more sinister is reapportionment. Every 10 years we have a census.
Because it's based on population, not on citizenship.
Everyone is counted, right?
Right.
California and the next census, if you looked at citizens, California and New York would both lose members of Congress because states like Florida, Tennessee, and Texas are growing by leaps and bounds. So what is the Biden administration intentionally doing? States that are suffering from population flight are being backfilled with illegals.
People will remember, you were one of the guys who greeted the president as he came into the chamber of the State of the Union, and you talked to him for a while as he was making his way down the aisle, right. And it looked like you were bending his ear about something, and I know a lot of people have wondered, what were you talking to the president about for so long on the State of the Union? You're a Republican, he's a Democrat. You looked like you kind of were intentionally wanted to grab him and have a conversation. What did you talk about?
Well, so on this issue of immigration. And so I always sit in that seat Going back to the speaker's fight. So if you
Is
go
that
back,
your seat?
That's my seat.
Okay.
And you know, although there are no assigned seats, I sit there pretty much every time we're in the chamber. So it's essentially mine. Tim Burchett always sits right in front of me, so he was right there too.
Tennessee seats?
That's right. But so I was very respectful when he came in, you know, the Southern thing. Thank you, Mr. President, for being here tonight. Appreciate that. And then I pointed to my lapel, and I said, I want to talk to you about something in this pin. And I pointed to it, and it's this pin right here that I was wearing, just right there. Mm-hmm. I said, it's Laken Riley. And he pauses for a moment, and he repeats her name. He says, Laken Riley. And then he goes, I love your pin. He had no idea what I was talking about. So the lights were on, but there was nobody home. He literally had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, you know, something to the effect of, you need to do something about this, et cetera, et cetera. Then at that point, his people pull him away from me, as one might assume they would. Tim Burchett grabs him and talks to him for a few minutes or whatever it was, and then off he goes. But literally at a time when America is under assault, and you have this horrific case. I mean, Laken is gone. Her family is forever changed, and it was avoidable. There are two little girls, one in Virginia, one in Louisiana. Their lives will never be the same, and it was preventable. And this president was responsible for that.
So there you have it, the inside scoop on that scene at the State of the Union message.